This is an author I've been meaning to talk about for a while. His name is Matt Haig. I've got two of his books here right now. Technically, this is going to be a review of this one, which is called How to Stop Time. It's not actually about time manipulation or time travel or anything like that. It's just about a guy who doesn't age, or he does age, I'm sorry. He ages very, very slowly, to the point where time almost feels stopped for him. Well, first I'd like to say, this has been a very, I just kind of discovered Matt Haig as an author this year. He's having a good year. He just came out with this book called The Midnight Library. This is like a new bestseller. I've been seeing it all over the place at Barnes & Noble where I work. He also just came out with a book called The Comfort Book, which is kind of like a self-help book of quotes and blurbs and things like that. I haven't actually gotten around to checking that one out yet, but I will very soon. I did, however, recently listen to an audiobook of another sort of self-help, sort of like a memoir of his called Reasons to Stay Alive. I listened to that on audiobook, and that was very effective because listening to it in his voice, it's like his own confession, or not confession, but like testimony about depression and anxiety, and just feeling very low and oppressed by the world around you, being kind of trapped in your own room. But Reasons to Stay Alive was sort of like this like, oh wow, life is dragging out in front of me sort of thing. Why should I even bother getting older and anticipating anything else in my life? I felt like that book was very tied to this, which is kind of the same deal. So, the main character, Tom, he's born in like Shakespearean time, like 1600s, early 1600s, something like that, or maybe late 1500s, I forget. But he's born into, a society that's, I guess, what you would call a lot more like primitive, not primitive, because it was modern society for the time, but just in the midst of becoming enlightened and like artistic and technological advancement as we know it was still a few hundred years down the line. Like the America was just being discovered and founded and things like that. So he's in like Renaissance society. He's born into that time, and so him and his mother just kind of lived alone together, and around the age of 13 it starts to become apparent that he is not aging. He like ages like a normal person until then, and then suddenly stop or like slow down. That's kind of like when his condition kicks in. This is kind of actually like a science fiction book because it is more of like a medical condition that he has. It's not like some kind of supernatural reason why he starts aging slowly. It's mainly just this like a gene that is obviously fictional in the book, but anyway, so he stops aging. The townspeople start noticing. They start branding his mother as like a witch who has stopped her son from aging, who's given him like immortality and things like that. And it becomes very apparent. And bad things start happening because of that, as you might imagine. So he kind of has to leave town. He's an adult by then. He basically becomes an 18-year-old who looks like a 13-year-old. And he has to leave town and find his own way in life. And life is not hard. It is hard for him. It's not easy for him. But he does live in the midst of a lot of like pivotal events and really interesting things that a lot of people can't say they've lived through. So like he meets Shakespeare. He starts working at the Globe Theater for Shakespeare and things like that. He also falls in love, and as you can imagine, for someone who, it's kind of like a Benjamin Button sort of situation. For someone who is so slowly aging, you fall in love with someone your own age and them outgrowing you slowly, even to the point where you've started a family with them, and your children, he has a child with this woman, and his daughter is going to possibly outage him. There is a catch to that, a few twists and turns along the way involving that situation and that romance, that family and everything. I don't want to spoil, as I always say, I don't spoil things in these reviews, but he does find himself needing to separate himself from any attachments, family, love, and that's kind of where the heart of this book is. Like it is a heartbreaking sort of thing. Um, so in theory, I mean, for me, not really, but I guess there are people out there who still believe that immortality is, oh great, like, oh, to be long lived, and like the advancements in modern medicine allow us to live longer, blah blah blah. I mean, that is great, but to like live a life of centuries long life, maybe even a millennia, to the point where he might get to, it's like the longer your life is the better. Well, no, in this case this book is kind of debunking that. Like, well, life is, it's beautiful, there's beautiful things in life, there's hardships and trials, but a long life comes with its fair share of challenges. You're living longer than all of your loved ones, and you have to watch people come and go. um, this is definitely a theme that's been explored in literature before. That concept is nothing brand new or anything, but the way Matt Haig does it in this, I found, was really profound. This book it skyrocketed to the top of my favorites list because I don't know, the way that he juxtaposes different eras that Tom lives through. Like the whole thing takes place in England, like in London. That's kind of like where he's born, where he comes back to, around that area of the world. But he does, obviously, with such a long life, Tom has time to be well traveled and get around the world and things like that. Matt Haig is a British writer, so it makes sense that the majority of the setting would be British, in his character and the culture that he knows. But the main foundation of the book is that he's remembering all these times in his life, from looking like a 40-year-old man, really being a 300-year-old man living in modern day society who remembers all these things, and he just wants a normal life. He tries to get a job, or he does get a job as a teacher at a local high school, and he tries to just fit in and be nondescript. But his past does keep coming back to haunt him, especially since he's a member of, like, he early on in life he was like inducted into this secret society of people with his condition, which is kind of like an underground kind of sleazy mob situation thing, at least by the people who run it. The guy who runs that society, which is called the Albatross Society, because albatrosses live longer. I forget why they call it the Albatross Society. There's this animal metaphor throughout the whole book, which I thought was really creative, between albatrosses, which is a symbol, well, thanks to Samuel Taylor Coleridge in The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, it's a symbol of death hanging around your neck, which is kind of the point, I guess, because people who live longer live through a lot of death and things like that. But I think it's also because albatrosses live for a long period of time. But these people who are called albas, or albatrosses, who have this secret underground agreement to keep themselves hidden, keep themselves, safe, basically. It's compared to the concept of mayflies, which a mayfly only lives for a day. Their entire lifespan is so short, and that's how people with Tom's condition view normal humans, and why they can't get attached to them. And so the whole book is kind of Tom wrestling with, oh, should he stay loyal to his own people who are kind of like really struggling to find their way in the world, to the point of doing dishonest work and hiding in the shadows, and almost becoming like a criminal underworld sort of situation. Should he stay loyal to them, or should he actually take a risk and love other people who are mayflies, who will die within a day of his lifetime, basically? And it is a kind of like ethical, moral question. So at the point where we meet Tom in the present, he's already lived through so much loss, and he finds himself working at this school, and even there he finds someone who tempts him to want to open up to her. There's this French teacher named Camille, and she's very like, I don't know, they just click. She's open with him. She's got her own baggage, obviously, but she's the first person in centuries that he finds himself attracted to, finds himself wanting to take a risk on. And so his present day struggle is with that. If determining whether or not he actually wants to take a risk with her, while also reflecting on his times living in, the Renaissance time, and in the 1920s, hanging out with F. Scott Fitzgerald and people like that. There are clues, throughout society, throughout history, that he was involved with different historical events and different people, different famous figures throughout history. So things like that occur throughout the book. But at the heart of all this, light sci-fi, light, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. It's just fiction. Matt Haig is a fiction writer. He also writes nonfiction sometimes. But everything he touches, I feel like, has been gold that I've seen so far. I can't wait to get to the Midnight Library and to the Comfort Book. I know he's got a bunch of other things like Humans, which is about like aliens who are critiquing human society and things like that. He's got a pretty prolific body of work so far, and I'm really pleased to have finally discovered him. He's already becoming one of my favorite authors. But I think How to Stop Time is definitely the standout so far for that, and because what he writes has so much humanity and raw emotion and raw vulnerability at the center of it, and I really appreciate that when an author can mix the most human of struggles with the most creative, kind of out there, far-fetched sort of suggestions for a premise. That's good writing. That's what literature to me is all about. I did want to show you real quick. I got a new bookshelf. I don't know how well you can see that. There you go. I even put some from the paper source. I went there and got these bulb paper flowers to hang down like vines on there. Here's my Funko Pop Edgar Allan Poe. Wow, it's so dark in here. I have the lights on. I was using the natural sunlight. There you go. But yeah, I'm definitely happier with this book setup. So yeah. All right. That's really all I wanted to talk about today, and I hope you have a good one, and that no matter how long and arduous your day is, you find a reason to get through it.